Hi, this is RN Bhaskar from Bhaskar Ki Business Baatein. Every week we look at policy, once a month we look at a story, and once a month we look at an interview. This time I'm going to talk about a policy, but not exactly a policy. I'm going to talk about a prediction. I'm going to talk about a development that will take place, it's already taking place, which could influence policy, especially in India. And what I am going to talk about is 3 countries that could change the world. And the 3 countries are Russia, India, China. In other words, everyone talks of BRICS. This is RIC. Without the B, without the S, it's just RIC. Russia, India, China. Why do I talk of Russia, India, China? Well, there are 2 reasons why. One reason is sentimental. It's sentimental because in 2009, I was looking at some numbers and I realized that Russia, India and China would definitely come together, someday or the other. And I wrote about that in a column in one of the leading newspapers. Some liked it, some said I was mad. Nothing unusual. In 2014, I had to give a lecture in China. And I gave a lecture in China where I told them why Russia, India and China would come together. And the professor who was there on the same table with me, the Chinese professor, laughed at me. He said, "No way." And I knew why he said that. Russia and China were not good friends. They both distrusted each other. If you remember, when China got its independence, China was so worried about Russia that the first border that they settled was with Russia. 1, it was a long border, and 2, it was with a very powerful country. And China did not want trouble with Russia. And so when the professor laughed at me and says, "No way," I could understand him. But I said, this is what the numbers tell. Wait and see. As luck would have it, exactly 2 years later, Russia and China signed a treaty for importing water from Russia through a place called Lake Baital. The idea was to connect Russia with China, and China could get some water. Why water? And that is where you have to look at a chart that I first compiled in 2009. Of course, I talked of 7 countries. Here I've talked of only 4 countries. USA as a reference country, it's not important for us, but it's good for comparison. And then I've taken the 3 countries that we're talking about: Russia, India, China. First, look at the land mass. The more land a country has, the more natural resources it has, the more it can develop projects and industries on that land. And if you look at land, you'll find Russia is at least 2 times the size of both USA and China. China and USA are the second largest countries that we're looking at. And both China and USA are 2 times the size of India. So when you look at landmass, India is thus 1/5 the size of Russia. It is very small compared to all the players. India is half the size of either China or USA. Look at the next indicator. And the next indicator is basically where we look at people. How many people does the country have? Remember, people are very important, because if you give people education and you teach them how to be productive, it creates wealth for the country. India's misfortune, as I mentioned in my previous podcast about the 3 blunders India has made, India has not invested in its people. Its education is poor. But when you look at people, you realize the potential a country has to grow. And when you look at these countries, you find that the country which is the most vulnerable because of people is Russia. Look at the density of population of people in Russia. A, because its landmass is huge, so the density per kilometer becomes small, and two, because its people themselves are not many. Russia has to do something about increasing the number of people it has, and Russia has only two alternatives. One, it gets its population to produce more children. That is not easy. And the second, it will have to work on some kind of policy to bring in people from outside to work in Russia. And this is where the problem is. Russia does not want Chinese to come into Russia. China is a next door neighbor. And when you allow the next door neighbor to come into your land, and you've got lots of land, it is very easy for the next door neighbor to become squatters like slum dwellers are in cities in India. Russia does not want that problem. It does not want people to come from outside and squat on the land. And then the second reason is Russians don't like Chinese, Chinese don't like Russians. It will take at least about 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years for relations to get mended. So, if Russia really wants to grow, it may have to look at India. India has lots of people. India needs jobs. The thing is that India has to create skills that Russia can use. Teach them how to do mining. Teach them how to build railway platforms. Teach them how to build railway lines. Teach them the skills that Russia needs. And then, like Indians experience in Saudi Arabia, let Russia create camps for Indians where Indians cannot marry and mingle with the local population. They stay there. When the work is over, they come back. That way, Russia's population is not impacted by the outside population. And the advantage for India is it gets jobs for its people. It has a production sharing agreement with Russia, and some of the minerals, including gold, that can be mined will come to India. When you do that, it becomes a win-win situation for Russia and India. I'm surprised that India has not taken this suggestion very seriously, although it was made in 2009. When you have Russia and India looking at each other for working together, there is one more factor, and that factor is water. Look at the chart, look at water as a percentage of land, and you'll find that India has lots of water, though we destroy water, which I talked about in the 3 blunders India is making. We have lots of water, though we misuse water. USA has lots of water, less than India as a percentage of landmass. But look at Russia. As a percentage of landmass, which is itself very large, it spans 12 time zones. Russia has the largest reservoir of fresh water in the world. Now, Russia has lots of water. And then look at China. China has the least water. And when you industrialize, you need lots and lots of water. Whether it's a cement plant or a steel plant or any other kind of plant, you need water to cool the engines. You need water for the processes. You need water. And typically, when a country advances, farming uses less water, industry uses more water. China has a problem. But what has China done? One, it has learned to be water efficient. Today, it is more efficient. It recycles all the water it uses and uses it once, twice, thrice, again and again. But it will need water. And that is why China looks at Russia to supply the water. And you can see the chart how the water is being developed. The plan has not taken off yet because some resistance is there in Russia. And so, while the plans are ready and work on the canal digging is started, it has stopped. At present, China faces a new problem. Because China is growing very fast, it needs more and more oil. Till about 10 years ago, China used to get all its oil from either the Middle East or from South America. But then that means going around the Cape of Good Hope It means going round India, going through the Malacca Straits, and then reaching China. And China also knows that the largest number of US naval bases are around the Malacca coasts. So anytime there's tension, USA can stop the flow of oil into China. China needed a way out. Its first solution came when Pakistan said, okay, you can build a highway, the CPEC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, and come straight to the Gwadar port, and you can take the oil from the Middle East without going round. China loved that idea. India didn't. But for China, it was important, so it went ahead. So that was strategy one. But there's a second strategy. Since Russia was its next door neighbor, it told Russia, can we import oil from you? And so look at this chart. Russia built a pipeline from its territory into China. That pipeline was not Sakhalin 1. And then there was a Ukraine war, and Russia said, can you buy more oil? China said yes. So they started building a second pipeline called Sakhalin 2. Today, China is one of the largest purchasers of oil from Russia. American sanctions have not worked because China buys oil from Russia and gives its own currency without going through the American exchange. Look at another interesting development. While India has been importing oil from Russia, India is nowhere. India is a very small player in the oil market. Look at this chart, you'll see where India stands. And then look at the second chart. In the first 100 days of the Ukraine-Russia war, you will see how Russian oil prices first crashed, and then as China started picking up oil, it started increasing, but Russian oil is available at a discount to American oil, so the countries that import from Russia benefit a lot more than they would have if they purchased American oil or the Middle East oil. And that is why the Middle East has also reduced the price of oil, because now suddenly Russia is selling oil through India or through China to anyone in the world. You have a situation where American sanctions are failing. Russia has been selling arms technology, defense technology, and oil to all the countries around. And remember, it's a large producer of gold as well. As far as India is concerned, India has a subsidiary in Russia where we work on a production sharing basis, only for oil. It is a subsidiary of ONGC called OVL. OVL produces oil for Russia under Russian command, and India and Russia share the oil that is produced. There's also another oil company that Russia owns. In India, it bought over the oil company of SR Oil, and that's become a Rosneft property. Rosneft is a Russian company. Russia produces oil but has very little oil processing capabilities, and the Indian oil company now processes that oil of Russia and sells it to the rest of the world. So India and Russia are coming closer. What has that meant for Russia? Look at this other chart. America thought that it could pulverize Russia, but after the war, see the ruble climb. See the balance of payments decline. See Russia becoming profitable. Today, Russia and Iran, both countries are benefiting in spite of the Ukraine war. Iran is benefiting in spite of the war in the Middle East. And these two wars have actually weakened America and have made Russia, China, Iran stronger. And while we are talking about Russia, India, China, the secret power in the background is Iran. Iran is important because it has shown to the world how a cheap technology from Iran can be a match for the best technology that the US has, which is used through Israel. Israel has been foxed again and again and again. Today, Iran is formidable in defense technology. Today, with the help of Russia and China, Iran is learning new tricks, and Russia and China are learning new tricks from Iran. Iran is providing more defense ideas to the world, especially Russia and to China, and that is why it has become a very important country. So I think in the coming years, you'll find that instead of talking just about Russia, India, and China, you will be talking about Russia, India, Iran, and China. It will be RIIC in the coming years. The world is changing rapidly, and there's a potential for these four countries, Russia, India, Iran, and China, to work together even further. A lot will depend on India, which has excellent relations with the US as well. But geopolitics is a funny subject. Countries sometimes are compelled to change loyalties because of new developments that take place. Will India switch loyalties, or will India still remain friends with both Russia and America is something that the coming years will tell you. But yes, Russia, India, China with Iran are actually changing the world works and the world thinks. Thank you for watching the podcast. As I told you, we discuss topics that many people don't discuss. And that is why I would like you to subscribe to this channel so that you are kept abreast of some of the latest developing concepts that are emerging in the world and which will have a huge impact on policy making in India. Do subscribe, and I hope to see you next week once again. Take care.